And that was a song called Your Own Sweet Time by James Blundell. And Grant, it's happened again. We've played a song and the artist magically pops up. G'day, James.
Neil, how are you, mate? Grant, how are you?
Great to have you on board. Thanks for joining us. We better tell the folks we're actually pre-recording this, so it's actually Thursday afternoon, not Saturday morning, but that's okay. We can work through that.
Yeah, internet magic.
Isn't it though? So we are here to talk about your new album, which is coming out. Oh, sorry, beg your pardon, it is out already. And sitting at number 1 on the charts. I forgot a bit about that bit. But that first song we just heard is off that album. We're going to go back though and talk a bit about how you got to where you are now before we talk about the album. I reckon 1987.
You got it spot on. Of comedic errors, basically the accident. Because as a young man raised in southeastern sheep and cattle station, my raging ambition to own more land and cattle than Sid Kidman did in his never got anywhere near that. And in the of learning the skills that went with it, I was managing a cattle station beginning and got run over by a bull who had no intention to the abattoir and had a series of incidents that wound up with a 39-year recording. I don't think you can really get, I'm grateful of John Lennon's comment, your life is what happens in other plans. And I think I've lived every inch of that.
Well, music must have been a big part of your life still, James. What were some of the early music that you remember listening to?
Oh, that's a great question. We didn't have television growing up. We got television that Armstrong landed on the moon because Mum was an English woman that Dad had met when he was travelling through in 1960, studying Hereford cattle. And prior to that, we had a wireless. And for those enough to know what a wireless was, it had no wires. It wasn't plugged operated, and they could pick up Mars. They found, and unfortunately, well, not unfortunately, very fortunately, the only station we could get was ABC. But ABC then was totally eclectic. It had no genre. So you'd have Slim Dusty, then you'd have Joni Mitchell, then you'd have the Seekers, and then you'd have the Doors. And I grew up with a broad palette of music that I listened to. But the family was very musical. Dad was theatrics, and Mum was a great singer. And on Dad's side, his mother had wanted to be on stage in the 1920s, but that wasn't a fun thing back then. And my grandfather was violinist, but none of us ever actually entered the art career. And as a result of music was endemic in the family, very Waldens. We used to sit around the kitchen, a couple of guitars, my brother and I, and sing while Mum was finishing. So it's about as hillbilly as you can get. But
who taught you to play? Who taught you to play the guitar, James?
James Edmonds Blundell. I had three when I was in grade 5 at boarding school, and the rest of it was going to get better at this. And then I was lucky enough to work with both in Australia and around the planet, and picked up bits and pieces. Anybody that really wants to excel at guitar will tell you that it's an endless learning curve, and got to the stage I'm happy with my competence, but would like better. I go and listen to Tommy Emmanuel and just want to burn every guitar I have.
He plays all right, doesn't he?
He goes okay. And then the album we're talking about was recorded in upstate New York, and the two producers, Larry Campbell and Justin Gwip, and Larry Campbell inducted into the American Music Hall of Fame 3 years ago as a guitar. And I think one of the very telling things in early pre-production, I was sitting on the veranda of my homestead in southeastern Queensland, upstate New York, and he's very laconic, and he said, well, I don't think we're going to have problems because every artist you cite as an influence I have played for. James Taylor, Jackson Brown, accomplishments is insane. So, and Justin Gwip was a guy called Levon Helm, who was the drummer from the band, the key vocalists and songwriters, and Justin was Levon's direct protege. It was really a masterclass as a long way down the track of being in the studio. This time round, I was the best of the best, and it was an absolute pleasure.
So you you started by winning Starstruck, I think it was called, and since then you've basically been back to Tamworth, pretty consistently winning Golding guitars for fun. But there was a period. There's been a period where you haven't been. Well, you've probably been playing, but you haven't been commercially visible over the last, I'm guessing, 10 or 15 years. Has the farm been your life?
Very much so. For years, consistent question was which life I loved the most, whether it was being as isolated as humanly possible in the bush with livestock, as unisolated as humanly possible on tour in front of people. And the only answer, I love both of the deep and abiding passion, but in the year of 2020, could go anywhere. I realised that in that entire year, I didn't miss being on the road once, but in the previous 36 years of being on the road, I always bush. So I guess that was the answer to the question. And look, again, synonymous. A lot of the ideologies and values that I put into the song were learned in the bush, and then I was privileged beyond words a lot, both domestically and abroad, and started to utilise those innovations and values on a much broader palette. So the old saying, "You can take the kid out of the country, out of the kid," are very real in my life experiences.
Well, I got a bit of a surprise when I was looking through your bio, James, about what you actually farm. Can you tell us what you do these days on the farm?
We have merino sheep, crossbred sheep, Hereford.
you just broke up at the moment. You just broke up at the moment when you said hemp.
Yeah. Well, I'll say it again proudly and loudly. We farm hemp on the property. This year we went through 2 years of trials. It's a very regionally, well, to be more specific, latitudinally specific plant. Different varieties thrive in different environments, and we spent 2 years, initially 13 varieties and then down to 9 varieties in the second year to see which is the most appropriate for here. And anybody who ever has had anything to do with the myriad varieties of hemp, Orion 33 and Ruby champions. And I've been an advocate of industrial hemp for 30 years. Medicinal, absolutely, intense personal research in that field and values. But I think that industrial hemp and its applications, which again are 2-minute account, is an industry that will grow steadily. And again, it's not a new industry; it's a re-emerging industry because the wall that separates England and Scotland is held together by hempcrete. So you can go back as far as you like, and it's a very well tried and tested product, and it's only its sort of reputation back in place, having been demonised in the 50s by DuPont and Randolph Hearst, was trying to get it out of the marketplace because it had too many applications by way of biofuels and materials for building, that he had a lot of products as byproducts of petroleum distillation that he wanted to clear the marketplace. And it wasn't until recently that Randolph Hearst, one of the great printing families in the history of the written word, saw hemp as a direct competition to paper. So between those two, they managed to kick hemp into the weeds as the demon weed and devil's lettuce and all the things that go with it, but conveniently ignoring the fact that it was a remarkable plant in so many ways and very easy to grow and cultivate.
Yes, well, there's several backyard growers, as I understand it, in various parts of Australia, James. So
well, this is one of the things that astounds me, that for a long time it was legal to grow a plant in your backyard in the Australian Capital Territory and 2 in South Australia. There is so much to the hemp story that is truly intriguing.
One of my favourite stories relating to the particular product was we had a disturbance at a house next door to where I was living in Geelong a little while ago, 5 or 6 years ago, and the police were called, and all of a sudden there were marijuana plants coming over my back fence because the guy that was being raided was pulling them out and letting them over the fence. and he's saying, I'd go next door, the bloke's got marijuana everywhere.
You can use that story in your podcast, James, I think.
I will do.
Yeah.
Yeah, not my marijuana officer.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, but the bloke next door just seems to have pulled a whole lot out of the ground. Let's talk a bit more about your music. You obviously are very much associated with the country music scene, including, I think, the first Australian to get a contract in Nashville that time ago. When Billy Joel would have said, "When I wore a younger man's clothes," country music was really daggy. It's not daggy anymore. It's actually really well accepted. What's changed?
Look, I ponder this particular question ad infinitum, and I've been delighted to watch the positioning of the perception of country music. But I think it really is nowadays the bastion of the singer-songwriter, and that music style has never and will never go out of style. You mentioned Billy Joel, and I mean, there's pick a great name. I had a heated argument one day some 15 years ago with the guy who owned a record company in Africa, and we're looking at doing a deal, and he said, "Oh, well, the day of the singer-songwriter is over." And I said, "Wow, I don't think we can work together, mate, because to me that's the background or the foundation of music and all its evolutions." So I think that what has happened globally is that the story is still tantamount to a country song, and people always enjoy that. They relate to what's being said. One of the alchemies of country music is say as much as you possibly can in as few words as possible, but make it as real as you can. That's stood the idiom in good stead for many years.
Do you feel proud of the path you laid for the ones that have followed? As Neil said, you were the first Aussie to get over there.
Grant, that's a unintentionally a flattering question, in as much as I don't feel that there was any particular intention to lay a pathway, but in retrospect, what I do, I'm appreciative of is being allowed to have a reasonably controversial career that at every point of scrutiny, anything that became contentious with the commercial part of the aspect of the music industry was that I always believed that sticking to the value of the song and sticking to the quality of the music was the right thing to do. And that seems to have rubbed off on quite a few Australian artists travelling to Nashville. Some have embraced the formulaic version of contemporary country music in Nashville. Some have gone up, that's not what I do, and have come home. So I'm proud to have been a pioneer in as much as that the Australian vernacular stands for something, and it's not something you just bend to suit, and that I'm really proud to be part of.
So the new album is called Patience Wins. My understanding is it's been like 10 or 13 years or something since you last released an album. Why now?
It happened to be the right time. There have been a lot of releases in that period of time. It's actually 8 years since the last studio album, and that's a pretty long wait in anybody's book. But this album was actually completed, with the exception of the song with Patsy and Dave, was completed in August 2022. And I often used to wonder as a young artist when you two entered the studio and 4 years later an album emerges, what can possibly take 4 years? But having been through the permutations that made an album 3 years from completion to release, I see a lot more. And a lot of it has nothing to do with the music. It's external circumstances, personnel changes in business structures, and all of a sudden you've got a 3 year wait on your hands. So the title track, Patience Wins, was actually given to me in the studios where we were completing what was the second album of my career, called Hand It Down, by an amazing drummer called Mark Meyer, who he and I have been friends for the best part of 40 years, and another stellar Australian artist called Kevin Bennett. And even in my mid-20s, the song really struck me. And I've tried to record it half a dozen times, and it just hasn't suited the body of work that was being put together at the time. So I think there's something to be said to the fact that the rust and the scars accumulated by this stage of the game made it a very relevant song, and it finally got its day in the sun.
I was reading some of the information that we got about the album, and I think you're quoted as saying the best stories are from real life. Do you hear songs as you're living your daily day life?
Very much so. Again, the singer-songwriter has been what I've gravitated to my entire life, going back to what we were saying about ABC being the format I listened to. I became a fan of The Doors as a regional Queensland country kid at 8 years of age. I don't know what it was about it. It was the closing of the Vietnam War, the huge social upheavals that were taking place at the time, emancipation, the pill, all those things I observed or was involved in way before being able to conceive what profound social changes they heralded and embedded in life as we now know it. And that really has always made me listen to what people are saying in a song.
Yeah, well, it is the proof is in the pudding, I think my mother would have said, in terms of, that little kid who's now become an internationally known singer, songwriter, and merino sheep farmer. Don't forget that bit. James, it's an absolute thrill to chat to you on the Two Blokes Chatting radio show. Thanks for taking some time to do that. We are going to take this conversation out with a song that's also on the album called After the Storm. It features two people who are called Patsy and Dave, and they thought, I know what we'll call ourselves. Patsy and Dave. Tell us about that song. Tell us about Patsy and Dave, and we can then sort of move on to the song.
Well, it actually, to me, illustrates the perfect version of a song finding its way into a body of work. I was very protective of the work that we'd done in Rhinebeck in upstate New York. And when I started speaking to Robert Rigby, who is the label head of Ambition Records, and I have two other artists on the roster who wanted to know if he'd be interested in co-writing and recording. I said, absolutely. Could admit that's one of the great joys of music. And what came out of that is a piece of music that certainly earned its place in the tracks that had already been done. And Patsy and Dave, when we first spoke, had no idea that the lyrics they presented, I was living in the middle of. That was in the middle of winter this year. We're having a tough winter, a lot of rain, feeding everything with a heartbeat. We just had an hellacious storm, and Dave opened the dialogue by saying, there's that whole thing about waiting to see what the aftermath is. And I said, Dave, you've got no idea. The worst part of damaging weather, particularly if it happens at night, is you have to wait until you can see what you've got to repair or what stock losses you've suffered. And that sort of set the tone for the rest of the song. And every time I hear this piece of music, I just think that it was a perfect combination of time and place. I was very receptive to the idea. I could contribute the reality of what the idea was addressing, and I think the piece works really well.
Well, we are going to hear from Patsy and Dave along with James Blundell in a moment. But what we can tell you, folks, is that if you're going to be at Tamworth in January, you'll be able to see a special performance called Words and Music. It's at the Tamworth Country Music Festival in January. Patsy and Dave will be there. But if you can't wait to hear from Patsy and Dave, here's a scoop. Breaking news. Next week on the Two Blokes Chatting radio show at 10 a.m, our guests will be Patsy and Dave. So they're going to have the right of reply. So if you've said anything that's not true, James, they're going to come back and go, don't believe a word he said. James Blundell, it's been an absolute
you're in for
thrill.
a treat. Patsy's a lawyer and is as sharp as a tack, but has a lovely artistic temperament, which a great sense of the ridiculous. And Dave Baird is one of the most delightful fellows I've ever met. He's just got a great life perspective. You'll enjoy that interview, and please give them my love when you're speaking to them.
We'll do that. James, in the meantime, thank you for taking time out. I know when you're a farmer, the other Rob, who's normally on this program as a farmer, he keeps on banging on about how busy farmers are. Can't be that hard. Just watch animals grow.
Yeah.
Water the plants every now and again. Well, thanks for taking time out to chat to us.
Well, I will say the reason I was particularly appreciative of being spot on time is that to do an interview on a property, you've got to stop what you're doing, get to where you've got reception, and quite often people in the music industry are lackadaisical, and you could be waiting 45 minutes. You go, no, that's my window gone. So it's a pleasure. Robert's right. Tell him I totally get it. And thank you very much for the time.
Thanks, James. We're going to hear from James Blundell now, and Patsy and Dave along with him, called After the Storm.